Graham Ike made one thing very clear on Thursday night. Nobody beats Gonzaga at home twice in a row on his watch.
You are Locked On Zags, your daily podcast on the Gonzaga Bulldogs. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is going on, y'all? Happy Friday and welcome into the Locked On Zags podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I'm your host and longtime Gonzaga podcaster, Randy Patton, here to bring you news and updates on all things Zag athletics. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel, folks. Before tip-off, check the FanDuel app and see what's dropping during NBA's happy hour every Friday from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. Well, Gonzaga was down as many as 8 in the first half against Santa Clara on Thursday due to some sloppy play and fouls. Oh my goodness, fouls galore in this one. However, Graham Ike threw the team on his back, carried them to a big time win. We're going to talk about his performance. We're going to talk about the good and the bad from Gonzaga in this game and our keys to victory. We're also going to close the show with some discussion on Gonzaga's best, or at least my favorite starting lineup for this team. We're also going to talk about Corey Kispert's new threads after he was finally traded from the Washington Wizards. All that coming up on today's show. But we start, of course, recapping Gonzaga's 89-77 victory. If you missed it, I don't blame you. It was a late tip, especially if you're not in the Pacific time zone between these two teams, tipped at 8:30 p.m. Pacific time on Thursday night. Gonzaga moves to 5-0 in conference play, while they and 17-1 overall, another 10-game winning streak for this Gonzaga team. I think their sixth 10-game winning streak they've had since they nearly went undefeated in the 2020-21 season. So lots of dominance from this team as of late. A fantastic game here, and it wasn't pretty. The first halves for Gonzaga lately have just not been very pretty. Wasn't pretty against LMU, wasn't pretty against Seattle U. San Diego was a decent first half, but a not so good second half. So we'd love to see this team put together a full 40 minutes. Has been a while since we saw that, but ultimately got it done here. It was tied at halftime, 37-all, and really it was the Zags were down 8 with like 2 minutes to go until halftime, and then went on an 8-0 run to send it into the locker room with a tie game. And then in the second half, kind of traded baskets for a while before finally reeling off a 17-0 run, which fully buried the Broncos and gave Gonzaga a win that ultimately looks as like a 12-point win. But for a while, it looked like it was going to be a 1 or 2 possession game. And then for a while, it looked like it was going to be a 20-point win before it ended up settling as a 12-point win. The good for Gonzaga in this game, Graham Ike was tremendous. This was one of the very best games that he has played in a Gonzaga basketball uniform in a career that has had very many great games. He so often steps up when the lights are the brightest. I mean, if you look at his box scores this year alone, his best performances are against UCLA and against Kentucky and against the Santa Clara team on Thursday, whereas his weaker games, with the exception of the Michigan game, of course, but he didn't do all that much against Southern Utah, for example, because he didn't play all that much. So when Gonzaga needs him, he steps up consistently, and he was great right out of the chute in this game. Nobody else was. That was a big problem for Gonzaga in this one, but Graham Ike, he finished the game with 34 points, which is one off his career high, which he set at Wyoming. So it is his career high in a Gonzaga uniform. He was spectacularly efficient, 13 of 17 from the field. He had 11 rebounds, his 10th double-double of the season. He also had a block and a steal. He was 7 of 8 from the free throw line, and he did a lot of his damage very early in this one. He had 9 points in the first 4 minutes of this game. At the media timeout, the under 16 media timeout, the first break in the action, Ike already had 9 points and 2 rebounds. He was 3 of 4 from the field. He was 3 of 3 from the free throw line right away. He had 13 of Gonzaga's first 17 points. At that time, Santa Clara only had 12 points. He was beating them for a good chunk of this game. Graham came out fired up. He came out knowing what this team did to Gonzaga last year and knowing that he was not going to let it happen again. That is leadership. That is leadership. Like, you can talk about, like, and the broadcasters brought this up a few times, that, a lot of these guys who are on this roster weren't on the team last year, or they weren't playing, like Smith and Worley and Venters weren't on the, playing on the floor, and Tyon and Miller and Mario and those guys weren't on the roster. But, they said, oh, like, guys like Graham will, like, tell them. And it's like, yeah, but also show them. Like, go out there and say, like, this is what I mean when I say we can't let this team beat us. Like, I'm going to go put this team on my back and dominate in a way that I know I'm capable of doing so. And Braden Huff talked about Graham after the game in the media room and basically said, like, he could probably score 20 every night, and he does what is needed for our team to win. And, Braden didn't say this specifically, but sometimes that's deferring to him. Like, that's Graham. Graham's got twice as many assists per game as Braden Huff, and their scoring numbers are now very close to identical. Huff's like 18, Graham's just about 17 per game. Yet in some games, EK will take on more of a passing role, a facilitating role. But when he needs to score, when he needs to just put the team on his back and get buckets, he can do it. He hit tough mid-range jumpers with guys right in his face. He scored over his shoulder. He scored right at the rim. He scored at the free throw line. He had a step back three. Not a good shot, but the shot clock was winding down. Somebody needed to shoot the ball. Why not give it to the dude who's doing it better than anybody else? And he knocked it down. Just one of those nights for Graham. He was tremendous in this game. Other good stuff for Gonzaga was one of the very few other players on this team who played against Santa Clara last year, and that is Emmanuel Innocenti. And Innocenti, very good game, despite picking up 3 first-half fouls, which is very rare because Gonzaga typically doesn't play you if you already have 2 fouls. But Few was running out of options because basically everybody was getting in foul trouble in the first half of this game. We'll get to that later in the show, but Innocenti scored in double figures for the first time since the Maryland game nearly 2 months ago. He had 13 points. He was perfect 4 of 4 shooting in this one. He was 1 of 1 from 3. He had 4 boards and an assist as well. His one blemish was outside of getting in foul trouble, I guess, but he was 4 of 7 from the free throw line. That's not a big area of strength for Innocenti this year, but considering he had not made a single free throw this season coming into the game, making 4 of them is still not exactly a bad thing, even if he left 3 of them, 3 points on the table. Really nice game from him. He was attacking. He had a catch and shoot 3 that was beautiful. He was getting in the lane. Like just really, really good to see him show some more confidence offensively for this team. Zags defense was spectacular as well. It was not as great in the first half, although the defense wasn't the issue for Gonzaga in the first half. The issue in the first half was that they kept coughing the ball up, they kept giving up offensive rebounds, and they kept fouling. Like, that was the main issue in the first half. But the defense was spectacular all night long, but really put the absolute clamps on them in the second half. The 17-0 run that Gonzaga went on from like the 11-minute to the 6 or 7-minute mark, whenever it was in the second half, was spearheaded by their defense. They got multiple steals, like 4 or 5 steals in that stretch. Really tough defensive possessions. They finished them by grabbing defensive rebounds, gave up just 2 offensive rebounds in the second half after giving up 11 in the first half. Just a really, really stout performance from this team on the defensive end of the floor. Santa Clara's offense that looked very good in the first half, even though they weren't finishing with a lot of shots, their offense was smooth. They were moving the ball well. They were getting looks that they wanted to get, and Gonzaga just stymied that in the second half. And suddenly Santa Clara looked lost and kind of panicked and confused. And you could just see that Gonzaga just completely took over this game on the defensive end of the floor. Going to give a shout out to Adam Miller as well. Offensively, not a great game from him. 2 of 8 shooting, 1 of 5 from 3. But as we've talked about many times with Adam Miller this year, he still finds ways to help this team win regardless of whether his shots are falling. He had a stretch in this game that helped spearhead that 17-0 run where he drew a charge on Jake Ensminger, one of the better players for Santa Clara. That was Ensminger's 4th foul, so he went to the bench. Like a minute later, Miller got fouled on a lay-in by Allen Graves, who was the best player in this game for Santa Clara. He came off the bench, but he was spectacular for them. It was Graves' 4th foul. Miller made both free throws. That gave Gonzaga their first double-digit lead of the game, and they led by double figures basically the entire rest of the game. Those 2 plays were critical. It sent 2 of Santa Clara's 4 best players to the bench with 4 fouls. It gave Gonzaga momentum on the offensive foul, and it gave them a double-digit lead on the other foul by Graves. Just really, really impressive, heady stuff from the veteran Miller in a game where they really needed those kinds of plays to spearhead that run. Got to give a shout out to Steele Venters as well. Knocked down both his 3-point attempts. He's been in a shooting slump, so it was nice to see him do that. Wasn't a great game from him otherwise, but he took 2 shots. He made them both. That's what he's on this team to do, and so it was good to see him get that done. The bad stuff for Gonzaga in this game, holy fouls. It was just a mess of a game. And we kind of knew this was going to happen. Santa Clara fouls more than almost anybody in college basketball. Gonzaga, we kind of knew Santa Clara was going to try to bait them into fouls. There were 21 fouls called in the first half, and somehow it felt like way more than that. every 30 seconds, the whistle was blowing. It was just constant fouls. Now, a very foul heavy game, while it feels like your eyes are bleeding when you're watching it, it tends to be an advantage for Gonzaga because they have enough depth. Case in point, like, a player getting 3 first half fouls is not good. And it was Emmanuel Innocenti. And while he had a good game and he was the Gonzaga's second leading scorer, Gonzaga can withstand large swaths of the game without Emmanuel Innocenti playing. Whereas a team like Santa Clara cannot withstand Elijah Mahi not playing big minutes. And he had 3 fouls in the first half. Jake Ensminger getting 4 fouls. Alan Graves getting 4 fouls. Like they can't withstand that the way that Gonzaga could handle Innocenti getting 3 fouls and Worley getting 4 fouls and Mario getting 3 fouls. Like they can fight through that. So it ended up not being a huge problem, but it was just a hideous part of this basketball game. Turnovers were probably Gonzaga's biggest issue in this game, but we're going to talk about them in the second segment. Man, it's got to get cleaned up. You can't have that continue to be a problem for them. We'll get more into that later. The Zags also gave up 11 offensive rebounds in the first half. Santa Clara is one of the best offensive rebounding teams in the country. This was a known fact coming into this game. Mark Few mentioned it before the game. He mentioned it after the game as well. And again, Gonzaga only gave up 2 offensive fouls in the second half. That was a huge difference maker between those two halves. But letting Santa Clara get second chance opportunities. I mean, I think at one point in the first half, I don't know what it finished at, but at one point, Santa Clara had taken 10 more field goal attempts than Gonzaga, and they were shooting under 40% and still winning this basketball game because they were getting so many more looks. That cannot continue to happen for Gonzaga. And then it was just a rough night for the point guards. Rough night for both Mario and Braden. Smith had 2 points. He had 4 assists, but he had 3 turnovers in this one. He played 19 minutes. He was 1 of 3, 0 of 2 from the 3-point line. Mario had 6 points, and he had 4 assists and just 1 turnover, so not that bad. I mean, I'll take 4 assists and 1 turnover from your backup point guard any day. He also had a pair of steals, but he was 2 of 8 shooting in this one. He was 0 of 3 from 3. Again, tough Santa Clara team. Tough defensive team for their backcourt, so we kind of knew it was going to be a harder game for them offensively, but really just wasn't incredibly impressed with either of them in this game on Thursday night. The big question we had coming into this game for Gonzaga was how are they going to defend the perimeter after what happened last year when the Santa Clara Broncos bombed 18 threes against the Zags. We're going to discuss how that happened and Gonzaga's turnover issues in the first half in particular. That and more coming up here in just a second. But first, folks, let's talk about something that most men don't bring up, but they probably should. Stress from work, money, life, it just doesn't switch off at night. And when it shows up at the worst possible time, Roogie at Ready is designed to help you take back control. Roogie at Ready is a next-generation prescription treatment created to support both the brain and the body, so you can feel present, confident, and ready when the moment matters. Roogie at Ready combines 3 clinically proven ingredients in 1 mint that dissolves under your tongue so it absorbs fast. And the science behind Roogie at Ready really stands out. It's 3 clinically proven ingredients in 1 formula designed for both mental and physical readiness. It's easy to understand why over 150,000 men have already made the switch. You just connect with a board-certified doctor online and everything ships discreetly to your door. Most men are ready in about 15 minutes on average, so you can stay present, confident, and in control when the moment is right. If you've been thinking about taking the next step, now's the time. Head to rugiet.com/lockedoncollege. That's RUGIET.com/lockedoncollege to get 15% off your first order for a limited time. Roogie Ready. Feel present, feel confident, feel ready. All right, folks, segment 2, still Andy Patton, still Locked On Zags podcast, still part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcasting network. And we're still recapping Gonzaga's 12-point win over the Santa Clara Broncos to move to 5-0 in conference play. Again, this Santa Clara team was 55th in the net, or 55th at Ken Palm, I think 60th in the net. So this is a good quality win for Mark Few and the Gonzaga Bulldogs. We're going to talk about the 5 key things that we laid out before this game and how they ended up playing out on Thursday in Spokane. Number 1 was defend the perimeter. Santa Clara drilled 18 threes last year when they scored 103 points on Gonzaga and picked up a victory. The only time in the 22-year history of the McCarthy Athletic Center that Gonzaga has given up 100 points in that building. Not the case in this one here for Gonzaga. Only gave up 77 points because Santa Clara did not shoot it well from 3. 7 of 26 for the Broncos in this one. That's a good 27%. They were 3 of 15 from 3 at halftime. They did shoot better in the second half, 4 of 11, but it just didn't end up mattering by that point. A lot of those threes that they did make in the second half were after Gonzaga had already ballooned the lead up to about 20 points. And in the first half, when they shot 3 of 15, they got some open looks that they just didn't knock down. Again, Mark Few was asked about this after the game and was kind of quick to point out, like, yeah, our defense was good in this game, but they also missed some open shots. And that just happens. One of the things we talked about in the preview show as well is this is just not as good of a 3-point shooting team as last year's team. Like, they don't have as many good players from beyond the arc. They like to shoot a lot of threes. They shoot about 30 per game, and they make about 9 of them. So them shooting 7 of 26 isn't really that far off of their metrics on the year. And so it's just kind of a combination of, I think, Gonzaga being more diligent about defending the 3-point line, but really it was just a personnel change. Santa Clara's 3-point shooters are not as good as last year's team. Gonzaga's perimeter defenders are much better than last year's team. So that's kind of how it played out. The 2 best 3-point shooters for Santa Clara were their 2 leading scorers, Christian Hammond and Elijah Mahi. Those 2 guys each shot 0 of 2 in this game. That is not going to get it done for Santa Clara. Alan Graves off the bench and Cherry Darlan shot 1 of 4 each in this game as well. Good stuff from Gonzaga's defense. Really helped limit Santa Clara's offense in this one. Key number 2 for Gonzaga was to get back to dominating down low. We thought in the Seattle U game and in the LMU game, Gonzaga was too comfortable settling for outside shots and not pounding the ball down low into the paint. That wasn't an issue in this game. Again, Graham Ike had 9 points at the first media timeout. It was clear and obvious right away. Gonzaga's game plan was to give the ball to their best player, give the ball to their senior leader, and let him go to work on the block. And he did exactly that. Even though in the end of the first half, Gonzaga only had a 16-14 advantage in points in the paint. It wasn't pretty. Again, there were so many fouls called in this game that every time you got the ball in the paint, you pretty much got fouled and got to the free throw line. So that's part of the reason those numbers were a little bit lower. Gonzaga did end up finishing with a 50-34 advantage in the paint, so a 34-20 advantage in the second half. Ike did most of it. 12 of his 13 made field goals were on 2-pointers. Not all of them were in the paint, though. He had a couple of mid-range jumpers as well. Braden Huff had 12 points on 6 of 9 shooting. Most of his were in the paint. He didn't really have that trademark floater game going here. Obviously, again, the ball just went to Ike so often. A lot of Huff's points came on offensive rebounds as well, little tip-ins, shots right at the rim there. Jalen Worley had a nice tip-in on an offensive rebound. Grant Foster had a few shots at the rim as well. Good job by Gonzaga getting down and scoring easy ones at the cup instead of settling too much for outside shots. But the Zags were also decently efficient from the perimeter as well, which was key number 3 in this game, was not to take too many threes, but to be efficient with them. And the Zags did a pretty good job of this. 6 of 16. It's not great, but that is 38%. You'll take 38% most of the time. You feel pretty good about 38%. 16 attempts feels good for me as well. Again, I think we don't want to see Gonzaga settling for too many outside shots. They did a good job of not forcing shots that weren't there. Most of the threes that they took in this game were good looks, were open shots. I know Mario went 0 of 3, but I remember all 3 of Mario's attempts. I was like, that was a good shot. Like, that was the shot he should have been taking in that moment. He just wasn't knocking him down. Adam Miller was 1 of 5, but again, he rarely takes bad shots. So I thought all of those were pretty good as well. But the keys for Gonzaga were Steele Ventures. Again, he went 2 of 2 from 3. Nice to see that shot start falling for him. Innocenti made one from the corner. Graham Ike made one, that step back 3. That was the ugliest 3-point attempt of the game, but it was necessary. And Graham was absolutely scorching hot at that time, so why not? Grant Foster went 1 of 2 from 3 as well. And then Braden Smith, 0 of 2, a rough night for him. Really, him and Mario, again, combined 0 of 5 from the perimeter. That probably can't continue for Gonzaga, but again, the rest of the team kind of picked them up from deep. Key number 4 for Gonzaga in this one was to take and make a lot of free throws. We knew Santa Clara was going to foul a lot. We knew Gonzaga was going to get a lot of opportunities at the free throw line. And we know, like, we talk a lot about Gonzaga's free throw shooting, and it's funny because, like, as a team collectively, yes, Gonzaga's not a good free throw shooting team. Like, they were shooting under 70% coming into this game. They shot 71% in this game, but really, Gonzaga has a handful of really good free throw shooters. They just have a handful of guys that really drag it down. It's not like the team is collectively all just mediocre, but just some games the wrong guys get to the line a lot. And in this game, the right guys got to the line. Graham Ike was 7 of 8. I mean, that's tremendous, but it's not unusual for him. He was shooting 75%, which was low for him. He was 80% last year, and he got back up in the 77 range after this game. Mario went 2 of 2. Adam Miller went 2 of 2. Innocenti was 4 of 7. Again, that was a big issue for Gonzaga in this game, but a big issue. I mean, whatever, he missed 3 free throws. It wasn't catastrophic, but like, again, it's sometimes the wrong guys are getting to the line. In a game where Ty Grant Foster doesn't get to the line, in a game where Braden Huff doesn't get to the line, you'd expect Gonzaga to shoot it better because those two guys really sort of drag down the average. Jalen Worley does as well. So without those guys getting to the line, you'd expect a better game, but Innocenti sort of pulled it down a little bit. Also, 21 attempts is not a huge amount. Not a huge amount. I think we talked about the amount. I think there was like 6 games this year where Santa Clara's given up more than 25 free throw attempts. So didn't get to the line a ton. But again, I mean, you can't really complain if Graham Ike is not getting fouled, but he's scoring. Well, you'll take that. You'll take that. He had a couple and ones in this game as well. Number 5. This was the big one. Turnovers. Gonzaga does not turn the ball over very much. They average 10.4 turnovers per game coming into this contest. KenPom has them at about a 14% turnover rate, which was top 25 in the country. Meanwhile, Santa Clara forces opponents to turn the ball over nearly 21% of the time, which was a top 35 mark in all of college basketball. They average 9 steals per game, the most in the WCC. So it's kind of a rock and a hard place. What's going to win out here? And in the first half, Santa Clara won out. Gonzaga turned the ball over 10 times in the first half. They averaged 10 turnovers per game, and they turned it over 10 times in the first 20 minutes of this basketball game. And it wasn't even just Santa Clara like doing elite stuff defensively. Some of it was, but some of it was just laziness, was just sloppy passing, sloppy ball handling. Braden Smith got the ball, like he got bumped, the ball bounced off his foot, went back over half court. That's an over and back. That's a turnover. Yeah, the fact that there was ball pressure on him is why that turnover happened. But that's not a mistake you can make. Like, you cannot do that. Steel Venters had 2 Dusty Stromer-like passes where he just basically lobbed the ball around the perimeter, and everybody in the entire arena could tell that. I think it was Cherry Darlon one of the times. I'm not sure who it was the other time, but you could see that they were coming to intercept that pass, and it looked like the pass was traveling in slow motion. That cannot happen. Those things cannot happen. You have to be tighter with the basketball. You cannot make lazy mistakes. You cannot make stupid mistakes with the basketball in your hand, especially against a team like this. Now, to Gonzaga's credit, they only turned the ball over 3 times in the second half. That was very likely a quite loud point of contention in the halftime locker room from Coach Few. I think if you were in that building and you were anywhere near the dungeon, you could have probably heard what he was saying, because I don't think he was happy with their ball security in this game, knowing that it was something Santa Clara was good at. Like, knowing that and still having turnover issues is, I mean, I don't want to say inexcusable, but like, for a veteran team like this, you cannot let that happen. It was really agonizing to watch. But again, credit where it is due. That was an adjustment Gonzaga needed to make to win the second half, and they did it, and that's how they ended up coasting to a comfortable victory in a half that looked like it was going to be anything but when they went into the halftime locker room. All right, folks, Gonzaga had yet another starting lineup on Thursday. We haven't talked about that yet. We're going to mention that and talk about which of the many starting lineups we've seen for Gonzaga this year that we like the best. All that and more coming up here in just a second. But first, folks, Fridays already feel different during basketball season, and FanDuel's making them even better. Every Friday night before the games tip off, FanDuel gives fans a new way to kick off the weekend with NBA Happy Hour. NBA Happy Hour is your official pregame. It's a limited time window where special offers drop right inside the FanDuel app before the action begins. Every Friday from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time have become appointment viewing with NBA Happy Hour. You just open up the FanDuel app during Happy Hour, and it always brings you something new. You got boosts, you got bonuses, you got surprises. And it's easy to check the weekly special before tip-off and make a move before the window closes. Plus, the timing is perfect. Right before games, right before the weekend starts, it adds some extra energy to your Friday night basketball without you having to overthink it. Gonzaga's odds right now to make the Final Four are at plus 340 if you're feeling good about that. If you're feeling good about them winning the WCC, how could you not? At a 5-0 start, they are at minus 700 to do that. So before tip-off, check the FanDuel app and see what's dropping during NBA Happy Hour every Friday from 6 to 7:30 p.m. Eastern Time. It's a little basketball, a little action, and a whole lot of Friday energy. That's NBA Happy Hour only on FanDuel, the official sportsbook partner of the NBA. All right, folks, segment 3, still Andy Patton, still Locked On Zags podcast. We're closing out the show first with the mailbag question and then closing it out talking about Corey Kispert after some news regarding his new team dropped earlier this week. We'll start with the mailbag question. This was submitted by Jim on Facebook, who says, we've seen many, but what, in your opinion, is Gonzaga's best starting lineup? Yeah, we're going to do a full mailbag episode on Monday, because this will be the first and one of, if not the only time this year where there is a Monday show where we're not recapping a weekend game. So if you got any questions you haven't gotten answered on the show, feel free to submit them to me. But this one was submitted early, but I thought it might be a good topic to tackle here since we had a starting lineup change in this game. Steele Venters, who'd been starting pretty consistently for Gonzaga this year, was replaced by Adam Miller. So you had a starting lineup that included Braden Smith, Adam Miller, Emmanuel Innocenti, and then, of course, the two bigs, Huff and Ike. We've seen a lot of them. Smith and Mario have split time starting at the point guard positions. Pretty much every one of the wings has started at least a game this year. Miller has, Innocenti has, Venters has, Tyon Grant-Foster has. We saw Davis Fogel start a game. We've seen Jalen Worley start a game when Graham Ike sat. I think the only player who has started every game they have played this year is Braden Huff. He's the only, he's the only one. He is the only one. This is unusual. Marfew doesn't typically move around his starting lineup that much. Some of this has been just unusual circumstances. Some of it has been performance-based. It's just, again, it's one of those things that we're not used to seeing from Gonzaga. And I think this question is a little bit tough to answer for a couple of reasons. One, I think there are certain players who seem to play better coming off the bench. So I don't know if picking my favorite or the best starting lineup necessarily is the best five players. I think if you were going to do the best five players based on the positions they're playing for Gonzaga, it would probably be Ike, Huff, Grant-Foster, Miller, and then either Smith or Mario, probably Mario, at least in terms of upside for the starting five. But I don't know if that's necessarily the best starting lineup. From a performance perspective this year, it hasn't been, at least according to Evan Miyakawa's fantastic data, which shows kind of best lineups for every team in college basketball. I think for me, my favorite starting five is pretty similar to that, but it does have Innocenti starting with Grant-Foster coming off the bench. And I think for me, that would be Smith, Miller, Innocenti, Huff, Ike. And I think this is a lot of what the starting lineup has been lately, with the exception of Venters starting in place of Miller. I like Miller starting there. I thought Venters and Innocenti starting together just limited Gonzaga offensively too much. Obviously, Miller and Venters both have the same role on this team as floor spacing guards, but Miller's a better defender and he's more capable of driving. And I just think he's more versatile offensively and better defensively. And so I think I like him in that starting lineup alongside Innocenti. It makes you have good defense and still quality floor spacing. The reason I like Innocenti in the starting lineup is because he doesn't need the ball in his hands. He has been described by Gonzaga's players and coaches as a ball mover. His role is to get the ball moving. His role is to keep Gonzaga in their motion offense, keep things moving, attack when it's there, shoot when it's there, but he's not commanding a lot of attention with the basketball in his hands, and he's a very, very good defensive player. Tyon Grant-Foster is obviously also a great defensive player, and he is a better scorer than Innocenti. That's not even remotely debatable. But I think it works well for Gonzaga to have Tyon Grant-Foster come off the bench, because usually when he's coming into the game, he's usually coming in for Innocenti, but it's often happening at or near the same time as Jalen Worley coming into the game for one of Ike or Huff. Usually Huff, depending on fouls for the bigs. But what I like about that is Worley replacing either Ike or Huff it takes away offense. Worley's not an offensive player. He's a very good defensive player. He's a decent facilitator, but he's not a scorer. So when you lose either Huff or Ike and you replace them with Worley, you need more offense on the floor. And that's why if you bring in Grant-Foster at the same time, you're suddenly getting a secondary scoring option, which you wouldn't have had if you're bringing in Worley and Innocenti at the same time, for example. If those two guys come in for Grant-Foster and Huff, suddenly you're putting a whole bunch of scoring on the bench. And while you're bringing in great defenders, suddenly you might have a lineup that's like, say, Ike, Worley, Innocenti, Miller, Smith. You're relying a lot on your guards to score the basketball because your wings are not as good as scorers. And I think that's where you start to run into some trouble. So for me, I prefer the Smith, Miller, Innocenti, Huff, Ike, with the substitution patterns being Worley coming in for one of the bigs, Grant-Foster coming in for Innocenti, Venters can sub in for Miller, and then obviously Smith. And honestly, Smith and Mario are interchangeable. It's interchangeable. It doesn't make a big difference to me. Whoever's playing better, whoever seems to adjust better to coming off the bench. They're playing around the same amount of playing time right now. Mario's upside is higher than Smith's. That's not debatable. It absolutely is, but his lows seem to be lower than Smith's right now too. So it's kind of just, if he can start playing consistently at a higher level, then sure, start him, let him roll, let him ride it out. But right now he's not doing that. And so I think it's okay to have Smith start. He's a bit more secure, a bit more kind of consistent in terms of what his floor is for this team at this point. For what it's worth, Evan Miyakawa's fantastic website. Again, you can track starting lineup data or just lineup data in general. If you sort it by like the best 5-man lineups for Gonzaga, you have to do a minimum possessions because it'll show you a lot of lineups that have Ismaila Diani and Davis Fogel on the floor because basically of what they did against Southern Utah and some of those games. But the best lineup that it shows in terms of points per possession and defense per possession is E.K. Huff, Grant Foster, Venters, and Mario. So definitely not the same starting lineup that I have. I think that's a phenomenal lineup. And I honestly don't hate it as a starting 5 either. The aforementioned reasons regarding Grant Foster and having more defense on the starting or less offense in the starting 5, which feels counterintuitive. I guess the better way to put it, more offense coming off the bench feels better to me. Last thing we're going to say this week here, Corey Kispert traded from the Washington Wizards after 5 years in DC, gets sent to the Atlanta Hawks alongside veteran guard CJ McCollum for Trae Young. Big time trade going on in the Eastern Conference. A bit surprising to see Atlanta move on from Trae Young without even getting any draft capital back. They get McCollum and Corey Kispert. I think they're going to flip McCollum to try to get maybe Anthony Davis from Dallas is being rumored. We'll see what happens there. But for Kispert, first move of his career. He was drafted by the Wizards, 15th overall in the 2021 NBA draft, coming off an All-American season for Gonzaga, leading the team to a national championship appearance. Again, spent the last 5 years in DC with the Wizards, played 311 games, started about a third of them, 105 total starts, played 25 and a half minutes per game, is averaging for his career about 11 points, shooting 62.5% on twos, 38% from three, and 80% from the stripe. This year, he's played 19 games, was dealing with an injury for a while, so hasn't played. Has only played about half of Washington's games this year. Started 2 of those 19 games, playing about 20 minutes a game, averaging 9 points, shooting 67.5% on twos, 40% from three, 76.5% from the stripe. Likely going to fill a reserve role for Atlanta, coming off the bench, kind of a 3-4 hybrid for them. Atlanta's trying to rebuilding. They're moving on from Trae Young, who's getting to the ripe old age of 27 years old. The NBA life comes at you fast in the NBA. They're rebuilding. Atlanta is around Jalen Johnson and Zachary Richache, the first overall pick 2 years ago in the NBA draft. Those two guys are both 3s and 4s, so Kispert will be behind those guys, kind of a veteran leader, floor spacing wing. We'll see how long they hold on to him. He is under contract for 4 years, but he has a very tradable contract, so I wonder if he will be flipped again, either as soon as the next month before the NBA trade deadline, perhaps over the offseason. Maybe Atlanta will keep him around as a veteran player. I mean, again, he's a really quality wing depth piece for a team trying to rebuild. But it'd be nice to see Corey get a chance to play for an actual contender one of these days, since he hasn't really had that opportunity yet in his NBA career. All right, folks, that's going to wrap it up for me today and this week here on the Locked On Zags podcast. Thank you so much for making this show your first listen or your first watch of the day. Only one game next week, and it's not till Thursday at Washington State. So we got a full mailbag show for you coming on Monday. We got some fun stuff planned late in the middle of that week as well. Thanks again, folks. Have a fantastic rest of your day. And of course, as always, go Zags.